What are some useful psychological facts or tricks one should know? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. Avoid saying you understand someone. Better to say you could only imagine what it must be like. Edit. In the context of empathizing. Story 2. Pay attention to body language, where the feet point, where the eyes are looking, positioning of the arms. It can be very telling of their mood. People try to hand you things when selling or advertising because the act of physical reception makes you more likely to pay attention, donate by. In a similar vein, car salesmen and the like will often offer drinks or snacks or something when opening the interactions. Receiving them makes you more likely to buy. Lots of sales positions rely psychological manipulation. When on the phone, the person who first hangs up has the upper hand during the next conversation, be it in person or on the phone. Due to our current culture, eye contact and silence carry a lot of weight. Becoming fluent in either can impact your presence among others. Again, silence can be used during bargaining. If you make your stance clear and cease speaking, the other party will often continue talking, often giving away their position or voluntarily ceding to your stance in an effort to fill the silence. The touching of arms, hands, or shoulders is a power move used to assert dominance. This is why the man in the suit will often put his hand around the other's back while reprimanding or commending him. The upper left portion of a photograph is the position of priority. Given our habit of reading left to right, that is where our eyes are drawn first. Politicians will often vie for this position when photographs are being taken. Others will come to you if you make a slight motion with your fingers and eyes, similar to a dog. Continued use of this in the proper circumstances will lead to them often looking to you. This is known as behavioral conditioning. When in a group with others, conversation and attention will flow like currency. A healthy group will have most everyone taking part, or a singular person monopolizing the group's attention. The most difficult and annoying group conversations involve those who are greedy for attention, continually trying to bring it back to themselves. Defeat this by leading others into conversation. So Jim, heard you went fishing? When entering a crowded room filled with people you don't know, glance in a direction and give a smile and head nod as if acknowledging someone. Anyone watching will assume you know someone, and you can use the momentum from the imaginary to move directly into engaging someone real. When in an unfamiliar situation, physically rearranging something can give a sense of control. The act of exerting power over something, even if it's just the book on the coffee table, can I prove your confidence? Walking as though you are working will allow you to enter places you often can't. People will give you a passing glance, see you are doing something, then assume you belong there. Misdirection is incredible. Even a glance towards something behind someone or off to the side is enough to let you slip away. Confidence is more incredible. It is possible to bypass confrontation with a brazen display of fearlessness. Sounds stupid, but it's known as bluffing and is ingrained in us. You can use vague references to get in close with people you don't know. Hey man, weren't you at X? Whether true or not, it can lead to more conversation. When you have something that you need to do but keep putting off, force yourself to do it for 5 minutes, with the option of quitting afterwards. By then, you will usually have re-engaged your brain from procrastinate into production and can do your thing. That's all I got at the moment. Answer. Due to our current culture, eye contact and silence carry a lot of weight. Becoming fluent in either can impact your presence among others. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to have dinner with the CEO of a massive energy company. Think guy in his late 50s with decades of experience. He would maintain extremely intense eye contact with a blank expression on his face the whole time I was talking. When I was done talking, he would often maintain the eye contact in complete silence for like 5-6 seconds. Felt like a lifetime. It looked like he was processing or analyzing something, and it definitely made me feel like I had to keep qualifying what I had just said with more information. I tried to resist rambling while he did that and just let him respond. It was very intimidating. Story 3. Someone is holding something you want. Get into a conversation with them. While listening to them talk, just put your hand out, smile and nod. They will most likely give it to you and totally forget. Story 4. I've tricked friends into believing we did things that we actually didn't. Example, I was with my friend Ron, who I've done hikes with over the years, our last being Saranac. I talked to him about a year after the hike and said, remember, I almost feel down the side of that cliff And you saved me? This did not happen, but what I did was put in clear pictures, like I slipped because I walked through a huge pile of horse shit which took away the grab in my boots. You have to be specific at first. A year later, I said, remember that time you saved me? And Ron did remember. That is because your mind remembers the last time you thought about something, and I painted such a clear picture of my lie that his mind recalled it. Fun stuff. Story 5. When talking to customer service, be clear, transparent, and encouraging. Have papers present or referral numbers at the ready. Help, but let them do their thing. Hey man, this is my problem. How can you help me get a good solution out of this? Here is everything you may need to finish this task. Thank you so much. You are my favorite person today. D. They often talk to but people who will stress and brute their way through a solution. Be someone they would like to help. Be someone who you would like to talk to on your most stressed out days. Edit. Don't say exactly what I stated in above. Just be accurate and as brief as you can. Story 6. When asking for a favor from someone, make sure to touch an arm or shoulder while making the request. They are more likely to agree to the favor. Story 7. If you want someone to like you more, ask them for a small favor, something they are likely to say yes to. It seems counterintuitive. You might expect that doing a favor for them is the way to go, but no. The brain is constantly justifying. So while they're doing a favor for you, the brain will logic out, why am I doing this? I must like that person enough to do this for them, and they'll like you more. Of course, this has a limit. Ask them for too much too often and it'll backfire for sure. But used right, it works really well. Story 8. The art of UPRD, under-promising, over-delivering, will help your life. Tell your SO that you will be home at 6 p.m. and you are home at 6:30 p.m. Doghouse. Tell them you will be home at 7 p.m. and arrive at 6:30 Hero. 50 of successful relationships are about managing expectations. Story 9. Interview or arrest. Tip. Sometimes the interviewer will ask a question and you'll answer, and then there will be silence. This is intentional. Usually the interviewee will add additional information to counteract the silence. I suggest clarifying you're done or asking if you've sufficiently answered instead. Story 10. When asking for something, using the word because and giving a reason, even if the reason is random, greatly increases the odds of them agreeing X. Hey, can I cut in line because I need to be somewhere in 5 minutes? Hey, can I cut in line because my apple broke its stem? Just using the word because justifies your request. Story 11. I read this on Reddit from someone who claimed to be a child psychologist or something, but kids like repetition because it creates a sense of security for them. That's why kids like to watch the same movies over and over again, and why my daughter now likes for me to read her the same book 5-6 times in a row. I think that explains why structure and rules with real consequences for breaking them are important to the development of a healthy child. Story 12. If you can't look people in the eye, but need to look them in the eye, look at their forehead, eyebrows, or the bridge of their nose. They can't tell the difference. Often can help make an interaction smoother. Story 13. If two kids want one slice of cake, let one cut it in half and let the other pick the half they get. The expression on the first is awesomely tragic. The next time they'll break out the ruler to cut that cake. Story 14. While walking on a crowded street, keep looking to the path you want to go. Most people will avoid getting in your way. Story 15. Anchoring is a useful cognitive bias. This helps explain why highball and lowball negotiating tactics can work. If I ask you how much you'd like to get paid for a job, then you have to think of a number while also worrying about what would be appropriate. You don't want to either undersell or oversell yourself and risk being taken advantage of or looking foolish. Instead, I provide anchors to let you know roughly what I want you to think is reasonable. In this example, the job you're negotiating a salary for normally pays $80,000 a year, but you don't know that because you're new. As the hiring manager, I do know this, and I don't want to pay you that much. So when we negotiate, I say, how much salary do you expect? Roughly $65,000? That puts in your mind that $65K is a reasonable number. You may not push for exactly $65K, but you will usually pick a number close to it because I anchored your expectations. The key to this cognitive bias is it needs to be the first number brought up. Answer, which makes it extra important to be aware of anchoring at work. When someone brings up a number that seems off to you in any way, clearly mark it as such. This anchors that number as being irrational. To take your scenario, how much salary do you expect? Roughly $65,000? $65,000 doesn't sound like a reasonable number. A more reasonable number would be $90,000. Wouldn't you agree? Now the hiring manager has had the tables turned and is more likely to hover between $80,000 and $90,000. Of course, both parties can be aware of the anchoring, both reject it, and then you're back to a non-anchoring universe, which ain't all that bad. Story 16. Give kids a choice when trying to get them to do something. Would you like broccoli or carrots with lunch when trying to get them to eat? Do you want mom or dad to tuck you in when trying to get them to go to bed? It's not a 100 by any means, but giving them the power of choice helps them feel in control and less likely to freak out. It might work with adults too, TBH. I just use it with my niece and things go so much smoother. Story 17. A bit late, but here goes. You can usually overcome anxiety in the moment by pretending you're helping a friend. Exercise outdoors is one of the most effective treatments for mild, moderate depression and can help major depression too. Volunteering helps both anxiety and depression. Animals help anxiety and depression, as well as many other things. For best mental health, volunteer to walk dogs outdoors. You'll get all 3 natural antidepressants at once. Next best, volunteer with animals in another way and get your exercise. Next best, volunteer to help people who are less fortunate than you and own an animal who you take outside daily. Story 18. If someone has hiccups, ask them, hey, what's tofu made of? It works like 80 of the time. A Japanese person taught me this trick. Apparently it's common there. It even works on me, and I know both this trick and what tofu is made of. Answer, I was eating at a restaurant on holiday once, and I had the worst hiccups ever. The type of hiccups that you can't even speak a sentence because they're so violent. A lady on the table next to me turned around and said, excuse me, if you can do 2 hiccups in the next 10 seconds, I'll give you 10. Those fudge hiccups disappeared right then because I was trying so hard to hiccup. Now, whenever somebody has hiccups, this is what we do, and it always works. Story 19. Licensed mental health counselor here. My best advice, don't have any problem-related discussion when you're in the heat of emotion. Either plan ahead and do it ahead of time or wait and address it the next day. E.g., kid always delays brushing teeth before bed. Talk to them about it in the morning or afternoon, not as you're trying to bed them down. I know this isn't always possible, but it makes so much difference. Story 20. When you want someone to agree to something, keep slowly nodding your head yes as you are talking to them. I spent years in sales using this. Now I'm a school teacher, and the kids think I'm some kind of Jedi, the way I get them to agree to things. Good edit suggests. Story 21. If you failed with some event, do well at the end. It's odd, but if you rate something on a scale of 1 or 10, and you have 1s through most of it and a 10 at the end, it's remembered as better than if you have 10s until the end and a 1 at the end. 1 being worst, 10 being best. People will see the bad going to good as better than good going to bad, no matter how much good or bad there is. Reminds me of Seinfeld, where George learns to leave at the peak, aka knowing when to stop is important. Story 22. There's a thing I was taught during counseling to take notice of your body on a physical level. For example, a deep breath or she, bouncing leg, butterflies, restless hands, clenched shoulders, tight chest, that kind of thing, and not judge them, just take notice. Taking note of these things help me relax and be less anxious mentally for whatever reason, and to identify the feelings associated. I forget what it's called, but it helped me a whole bunch. Answer. I have some anxiety issues. When they crop up, I tend to flex my hands a lot, making fists over and over, and flexing my fingers, mainly. I decided to try and use this to my advantage. When I notice I'm doing this, I clench my hands tight for a few seconds while taking a deep breath, then relax them while breathing out. A lot of my tension just fades away, at least for a little while. Story 23. When listing things to someone, they are most likely to remember the first and last items in the list. This can be used when giving someone options, and you would rather them choose certain ones without being too obvious if the items on the list aren't particularly out of place. Story 24. When giving verbal instructions, say the thing you want the listener to do instead of the thing you want them to avoid. What brand should we buy? All of them are good except for brand X. Stay away from X. We got brand X just like you said. The brand name stuck in their mind, but they forgot you were telling them to avoid it. Happens with a lot of things. Story 25. More so just interesting to see. Move your arms occasionally to various positions or perform various minor gestures, such as crossing them. It works better in one-on-one conversations more, but you'll notice the other person will tend to do the same action. Most people aren't aware of it. Funny to point out later, it's a subconscious thing we tend to do to socially fit in with the majority. Story 26. Avoid trying to use psychological tricks on people constantly. People will stop thinking you're a manipulative prick. Story 27. If your SO says they don't want any fries while you're ordering in the drive-thru, get them anyways. Story 28. Too late to the party, but put percentage in what you're saying. It helps 87 of the time. Also, don't use 100. That's why you never see 10/10 doctors recommending a product. 8/10 is perfect. Story 29. When walking along a busy pavement, look at where you want to walk and people will magically move out of your way. It's quite unnerving sometimes, but I would 100 recommend trying it. Story 30. I work in IT. I make it a point to get face-to-face with people in the company, especially if I'm new. They associate my name and title with my face. The reason for this is people usually will be nicer on the phone to people they know. It's easy to scream at someone you've never seen and have no connections with, not so much when you've had conversations with them in person. Story 31. If Ree's question really interests you, read the book Yes by Robert Cialdini. It's a whole bunch of research studies on the psychology of influence with practical applications. Fascinating and fun. Story 32. Priming. This can help you academically and in other areas of life. Consciously portraying learning and education as helpful forces that will have a positive impact on your future will prime your brain to be more receptive to academic work and make it easier to remember and perform better consistently. Having a positive self-image as a gifted academic and intellectual will make your subconscious believe that you are just that, and it will subsequently interpret the world around you in that light. Story 33. Little kids are literally incapable of seeing others' perspectives. It's called theory of mind, and you don't get it until you're 5 or so. Before that, you're like a little sociopath. Answer. Recent research shows that it's not that kids don't have theory of mind until 5. It's just that they are bad at using mental states, words like think and know in an adult-like way, until 4 or 5 years old. So when you test them with, where do you think Susie will look for her toy, they fail at those questions. But if you test them without those words, e.g. by having them act out a scene with dolls, they show TOEM much earlier. For as young as we can test, it seems that children have TOEM. That doesn't mean they're going to be perfect at it. You still need a ton of general knowledge and computation to accurately appreciate someone else's point of view in daily life, which will inevitably make children suck at realistic TOEM tasks. All I mean is that in laboratory conditions, children can be shown to have TOM from apparently the beginning, and failures at using it are failures in other domains. Story 34. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 20 men admit to sleeping with a cuddly toy on a regular basis, so teddy bear may be a good present both for women and men. Story 35. People memorize objects by shape and color imprint first, then layer on details after. If you change the shape of an object in their memory, they just lose it. You can make someone's lighter disappear, for example, by simply standing it up and moving it a few inches on a mildly cluttered table. This results in the person using idle memory to go back to the object only to find it doesn't fit their memory and don't tend to reprioritize what they are looking for right away. I've seen it done with entire packets of biscuits on the arm of a chair. I didn't believe it at first, so I tested it on my mates, and it is surprisingly easy to do and does work. The trick is not to get noticed doing it. Story 36. Be the one to make the first step if you want people to trust you. People in general are careful as they know that someone might want to hurt or exploit them, so they hide themselves. If you want people to open up to you, open up to them first. Show them that you are willing to make yourself vulnerable to them in good faith. That shows good faith and trust, which in turn entices them to open up to you. Of course, there are some problems with this tactic, and that is that if you do this, people can exploit and hurt you. But there are ways around that. If you have enough life experience, you will know just how much to open up and what to open up with without putting yourself into danger. I have always used this tactic, and TBH never really made any enemies or was exploited, and people opened up to me like crazy, setting up strong bonds and friendships. Story 37. Learn how to acknowledge feelings and paraphrase what people are saying, and they'll think you're an amazing listener, and you'll never have to talk about your personal life. People love talking about themselves. I learned this in counseling, but saw it in action with my ex, whom I never saw speak about his personal life with anyone in the 2 years we were together. Example, I have so much going on right now. The boys need to do all their school exams, and Christmas shopping keeps getting put off. Plus, I need to drive to work every day as his car broke down, etc., etc. Relating me too. Christmas shopping is so stressful. Humans naturally turn the topic back to them somehow, like story topping, and this is a major social pet peeve. Do it very sparingly. Acknowledge it sounds like you're really overwhelmed at the moment. Flatter them. It sounds like everyone relies on you so much. Paraphrase. So it's really feeling like there's way too much to do and you just don't get enough time to do it all. Story 38. My psychology prof, a doctorate, taught us these things about studying for exams. Be in the position, clothes you're going to write the exam in X, sitting upright in an uncomfortable chair or at a desk or in a comfy hoodie. Try to avoid things like sitting on your bed or on a floor. Listening to a song or to a small collection of songs while studying that you can repeat right before the exam to get your brain in the right mindset. Try organizing songs to certain theories and limit the amount to about 4 songs max. Humming them during the exam will help you to remember things. Always study with someone, even if they aren't studying the same thing as you. Your competitive nature will kick in. If you can't do it with people, study in front of a mirror. Never study all at once. And chances are, if you haven't learned what you need to in the 24 hours prior, you probably won't remember it come exam time. There's no real point in cramming the night before. A good night's sleep is much more useful to what your brain already knows. Read the exam 3 times in total. The first time for questions you're absolutely positive on. Fill those in immediately. The second time is for the ones you think you know, and mark them on the side with what you believe is the right answer. You can also use this read-through on multiple choice and eliminate answers you know to be wrong. Your initial feeling about them is usually the right one, and reading them again will only allow doubt to creep in and skew you off the right path. She said try your hardest to get rid of at least 1 or 2 of the available answers. If you can't eliminate any, write bullet points of what you do know on the topic or thoughts. Something might lead you back to the right track. The third time is just to get questions answered with the best guess. She also said, and I'm paraphrasing on this, but that short answer and essay questions are bullshit. Studies show people who are naturally gifted at bullshitting tend to score higher on those portions, even if they never studied the course. They are better at articulating what they do know and blinding a reader with fanciful words. Whereas people who feel anxious about those categories tend to bomb them just because they feel anxiety and mess up on wording, sentence structure, organization of thought, even if they know the facts and can tell you them personally. If you feel these anxieties, your best method is to keep your sentences short, simple. Simple sentences can't be faulted if their facts are correct. I followed these for every exam after her class, and it made a distinct difference in my testing. I ended up becoming the weird girl who did her studying in the classroom with a hand mirror, in the same hoodie, humming the same Mika song over and over again. But I graduated from my extremely difficult program on the higher end. You'll look like a nutter, but it will get you through. Story 39. If someone gives you 2 options, they usually give the one they want you to choose second. Really wish I could find a source or explanation on that one. Story 40. One of my exes taught me a lot about reading girls' body language. People watching became way more fun. Are her shoulders open and she's facing you? She likes you. Did she twirl her hair while listening to you? She likes you. Are her legs pointed towards you? She likes you. Did she glance at the corner of her eye while not moving her face? Oof, you just lost a lot of points for what you said. Is she staring at you? Hello! Did she touch your leg and giggle? Ooh-hoo. Did she cross her arms and sink back into her chair? Abort, abort. Answer. These seem like the obvious ones. The one I look for involves activity. If you're doing something, let's say drinking at a bar, and she turns towards the drink, she's less interested in you. If she keeps her face pointing towards you, even if her body turns towards the drink, you have her attention. And if she faces you directly and reaches blindly for the drink to hold in front of her, you have her undivided attention and interest. Story 41. If you are panicking, name 5 things you can see. Name 4 things you can feel. Name 3 things you can hear. Name 2 things you can smell. Take 1 deep breath. You can switch around feel and hear depending on environment. This is primarily a technique for people suffering from anxiety, PTSD, and CPTSD. However, everyone panics from time to time. It is worth knowing how to ground yourself. Story 42. When your mind is racing or you are having a really stressful emotional time, verbally telling yourself, stop can actually help you calm down. Confidence is gained by faking it at first. Most people don't listen. They wait for their turn to speak. So if you simulate curiosity toward them, chances are they will become your friend very easily. Story 43. When playing Catan and having a card stolen from you, stack the one you want to keep behind another irrelevant card slightly higher irrelevant card closest to you. If they reach for those 2, ease off the irrelevant card with your thumb while maintaining firm contact with your fingers on the valuable one. Even if they reached for the valuable card first, they'll almost always unconsciously switch to pulling the card that comes easily. Story 44. If you want to avoid a conflict, sit next to the person you think might be aggressive. It's more difficult to be aggressive towards someone you're sitting next to than someone across from you. Story 45. Act uncertain, especially when you're certain. Never show your strengths or weaknesses with undue confidence. Story 46. People's feet are often an insight into what they're thinking. For example, if you approach two people talking and they turn their torso to you but not their feet, they prefer you left them alone. Similarly, if you're talking to someone and their feet are pointing away from you, they want to escape. Story 47. My psychiatrist taught me a useful method for bringing yourself out of a depressive episode, a dissociative episode, etc. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. First you count, and if you're able, say out loud 5 things you can see, then 5 things you can hear, then 5 things you can feel. Not emotional, but like my bracelet on my arm or my butt against my chair, etc. Then you go through and do that again 4 times, and then 3, and so on, without repeating anything. It gets harder as you go on, so it takes progressively more focus, and it makes you aware of your surroundings, so you pay less attention to your feelings for a little bit. Story 48. In scrolling screen games, if you want the player to go right, make all shadows go left. The player feels like the source of light is on the right, and he would likely feel curious to go there. Story 49. Cialdini has some tricks to convince people of influence. They are reciprocity. If you do something for someone else without expecting anything back, they will probably do something back. Example, Steam gives you free games. This makes you want to pay full price for other games because you got free games. Scarcity. If there's a limited amount of something, you are urged into buying it. Example, any limited edition ever. Commitment, consistency. If I do step 1, I'll probably do step 2 as well. Example, if I put something in my online shopping basket, I might as well sign up for the website. Social proof. Something is probably true if others say so. Example, reviews on websites. Many good reviews will convince you that the product is good. Authority. Something is probably true if someone you expect to be knowledgeable about the topic says it is. Example, a scientist approving of a product in a commercial. Liking, people are convinced more easily if they like you. Example, if you look good, people like you more. If they like you, you can convince them. Story 50. When you want a yes response from a group, ask several yes questions immediately preceding it. The natural inclination is to continue saying yes, even if the answer is actually no. Story 51. I heard this the other day. Apparently, if you pick a word someone is using and smile each time they say that particular word, they will start to say the word more often. For example, someone is talking about was, and if you smile when they say døgn, then they'll say døgn more often. Story 52. Striking a powerful pose, i.e., holding your arms outstretched with chest high, can boost your confidence and reduce stress in just a couple minutes. This can be great just before an interview or a date or anything where you'd want to come off as confident. Also, exercising has been demonstrated to have similar effects to antidepressants in clinical patients. Story 53. Your body creates a lot of associations that aren't actually there. It will associate wearing work clothes with having to focus and wearing loungewear with relaxing. So if you work from home or can wear casual clothing at work, it may be worth it to actually put on a pair of slacks for productivity's sake, if your brain has actually made the connection. Answer. When I was in middle school, I had a teacher that used to tell us to dress up on test days. They'd say, dress for success. I continued doing this through college. If I pulled an all-nighter studying for an exam, I would still go to class looking nicer than I would on a typical day. ADK, why it worked, but somehow it always made me feel more prepared. And 910 times I would get a higher grade because of it. Story 54. When listing things to someone, they are most likely to remember the first and last items in the list. This can be used when giving someone options, and you would rather them choose certain ones without being too obvious if the items on the list aren't particularly out of place. Story 55. I think of a couple, psychology major here. The cocktail party effect is a cognitive predisposition towards selective attention. Even in loud environments, part of your attention is reserved to major triggers like your name. If your name gets shouted out in such environments, chances are you are more likely to hear and pay attention to it. That happens in conversations as well. There is an auditory focus triggered by your brain that pretty much commands your cognition to isolate all the external inputs besides the ones in which you really want to be focused in. Another interesting phenomena are the Gestalt principles in psychology. pretty much states that the totality of the perception processes cannot be explained by the sum of all its parts. To explain this, they have a couple of principles in which your perception acts in order to keep reification, structural integrity of objects, and multi-stability. Imagine an optical illusion. Your brain struggles because it is either trying to reificate the objects, give them form and a known shape, or trying to create multiple images, like those Escher birdfish pictures, going back and forth. It is one of the most interesting schools in psychology that pretty much lead to some neurological principles in which computation is based upon. Story 56. Physical contact can be incredibly influential when used properly. A nice slap on someone's back when greeting them, if well done, can give the impression of comfort and put your company at ease. Comfortable body language and light, appropriate touching does wonders for your charisma. Also, men don't like to be approached and spoken to directly. Try to interact with them from the side or slightly tilt yourself from directly facing men to make them feel more comfortable while speaking with you. Answer. Can confirm this definitely works. I have a maintenance guy in my office who visits every now and then. We never really had that much of an interaction until a few weeks ago when I met him and patted his back. From the side OFC, it's just weird to do anything from the front, IDKY. And now whenever he visits, he makes sure he passes by and says hi to me. And he also knows my name now. I should be patting the back of everyone I meet. Story 57. The fundamental attribution error is an important social psychology bias that we should all be aware of. It is the phenomenon where when something happens to me, I take into account my environment and external factors that might have made that happen. I am drowning in student loan debt. Older generations told me to do this when I was too young to understand. Politicians and corporate figures have created a system that is harming me. Whereas when bad things happen to other people, it is because of an internal innate characteristic of that person. He is drowning in student loan debt because he chose to major in English. This could be applied to many political issues today, including a lack of empathy towards others. Story 58. People naturally project and predict others' actions based on how they themselves would act. So, don't trust anyone who is unwilling to extend trust to others. It's probably because they're not trustworthy themselves. Don't lend things to people who are paranoid about theft, or you might not get those things back. Story 59. This is a good one if you are leading a team. Let's say you have some problem you need resolved, and that you kind of know the answer, but you are having a hard time actually coming up with it. Instead of describing the vague idea in your head, you should give all of the vague components of the solution when you outline the problem, and then you propose a bad solution you know they won't go for. The person 9 times out of 10 will formulate the solution you had in your mind. The best way to think of this is that you are delegating your mental processing to another person. It has the additional effect of making the other person feel like they are smart and that they are helping, and it shows that you are willing to be corrected, listen, and take advice. Even more, if someone feels like they came up with something, they are more likely to execute on it. Story 60. My favorite isn't super useful, but I use it to mess with my coworker. Often if you are in a conversation, you can just hand someone something, and they will usually willingly take it so long as you don't break the conversation. This is because they are distracted and paying attention to what you are saying. I use this to just hand random stuff to my coworker for no reason. Usually he laughs and tells me to stop doing that before making me take it back. It also usually takes him a minute or two to realize when the item I gave him was something from his desk. Answer, when I bartended, I did this to screw with my coworkers. If they were washing pint glasses, they'd hand them to me to put away, and it just walk to the other side of them and hand them the same glass as the next one to be cleaned. It could take minutes for them to realize that this seemingly endless pile of glasses was legitimately just the same one over and over. Story 61. If you want to convince someone to change their mind on a topic, use different words than they use instead of paraphrasing or using their words. Story 62. Match the tone and pace of another person's speaking style. It connects you on a subconscious level, and they are more trusting of you. Answer. I talk differently to different people. I talk sweet and southern to old people. I speak very properly and confidently to wealthy people. I try not to use big words when talking to my husband's family. I talk a little slowly and enunciate my words a little better to people who are still learning English, but never condescendingly. I always smile because I have a bad case of RBF. I also always make eye contact with servers or people in the service industry. You'd be amazed at how few people do that. I also always smile and thank them when they bring me something. Story 63. If you're trying to explain a process with steps to someone, start with stating the goal so the steps make sense rather than confusing. Story 64. If you give a reason after a request, the person you are asking is more likely to agree to the request. Best part is that the reason you give doesn't actually have to be related to the request. People just like having a because to latch on to. Story 65. The 30-second hug. If you are having a rough day or arguing with your spouse, try giving each other a silent 30-second hug. Don't let go. Don't talk. Just slowly count to 30 in your head. You'll start to relax, and because it's sort of an awkwardly long time, you'll feel closer and calmer with the person than you did before the hug. Try it. My husband and I rely on this, and it genuinely helps almost any argument or source of stress to find a resolution. Story 66. Most people's sense of emotion outweighs their sense of logic. If you can take emotion out of the equation, you can gain the upper hand in many situations by logically assessing where the other person's emotions will guide their thinking. Then you can use logic to determine when to sprinkle some emotion of your own in there and when to say what will get exactly the emotional response you want. Story 67. If you're teaching a new class, you can get them all to instantaneously stop talking when you're ready to begin without a single word. Just stand perfectly ready to go and make eye contact with someone in the front row and give them a polite smile and head nod. Maintain eye contact and wait until the people they're with realize their friend is paying attention to the professor. It ripples outward very quickly from here as everyone realizes they've been talking when the lecturer is starting. Then start closely watching the people left talking. The last two people talking will have a brief awkward sensation when their own voice reverberates off the walls and they realize the class is waiting for them. Guaranteed instant rapport and respect from the class. They take notes with serious intent and make the most of their first semester at university. But make sure you don't hold anything against the last people talking. Some days your life's front row, other days you'll be in the back row. Story 68. People are much more likely to correct you than give you info you are seeking. Instead of asking, how many widgets? Ask, you have X widgets, right? And they will almost always correct you, giving you the info you need. Took many years of phone sales to learn this. Story 69. Conformity is powerful as fudge. I'm known for being the guy who gets everyone super tipsy at parties because I get everyone to do a bunch of shots. The trick is to force people to decide quickly. Given enough time, you can consciously decide, yes, I want to do this shot, or no, I don't want to do this shot. But if you make them decide quickly and don't give them time to think, their gut reaction will almost always be to conform and take the shot with everyone else. The exception to this rule is hipsters who have trained themselves to have a gut reaction of nonconformity. The secret there is just not to hang out with hipsters. Story 70. Ask somebody a big favor first, and they're more likely to do a small favor. You ask second, can I borrow your car this week? What? I have to go to work? No, bro. Oh, can you water my plants this week? Okay, sure. Story 71. If you have asked a question and been answered, but know there is info being left out of the answer, just wait in silence while looking at the answer. Eventually, they will feel the need to fill the uncomfortable silence and will start elaborating on the answer, mostly likely, giving you the information you need. This tactic is commonly used when interrogating, whether in a courtroom or a police interview. Story 72. If someone is being a male body part, tell them they have something in their teeth. That will make them feel self-conscious and weird and should end their dickishness. Works every time. Story 73. Try yawning if you want to see if someone could follow you. If he does the same, it means he is. It's called a mirror effect, as I remember. Story 74. If you have to accomplish 2 or more tasks and you're not sure which one to start on because you're being nitpicky, just start on one. A lot of times just starting something is half the battle. Story 75. This has worked well for me in the past. When recommending something to a person, start off with how well it's worked for you. End off with it too. Found it to be really effective. Story 76. If you disagree with someone and want to change their mind, you should start your sentence with, I agree with you, but, even if you don't agree with a single thing and your following sentence contradicts their entire argument. They are more likely to agree with you. It's based off the principle that we dislike hearing negative things. And so if something is phrased in the positive, more likely to listen. Story 77. I've been told I can be very scary. I am constantly perceived as an authority. It has been this way for a long time. This always creates challenges in social settings, so I have learned to act unsure about things or bumble around with simple mechanics to create an equilibrium between me and them. This works great on macho men and timid women. I'm a mechanic, so I'll drop a wrench or fumble something simple. I'll also deliberately stumble for words or phrases until I get a small encouragement from them. Usually they start trying to help you work out the story or phrase. Then their guard is down and you can then eliminate them. Works every time. Story 78. Talking aloud to yourself can help anxiety. Your brain is actually a collection of different brains of different levels of sophistication. Like somebody got a ZX Spectrum and never replaced it. Just every time a new model came out, they bolted it on. But the old school hardware is still there and working. Some of the hardware is extremely old school, and some of the oldest is the part that deals with fear. It's not smart. It can follow the inner thoughts of the more high-end subbrains, but only to filter them for possible threats. Once it's set off, alarms blaring, it stops listening. You can think calm down as much as you want, but it won't have much effect. However, that vintage bit of kit is very responsive to your hardware input channels. If you say it's all going to be okay out loud, your fear center hears that. And if you say it a few times, it may actually start to settle down. Try it. It genuinely helps. Story 79. When trying to self-talk your way through a stressful event, truthful thinking works better than positive thinking. For example, if you're nervous about flying, the people who got off before me all look fine is more effective for managing the anxiety than, oh, everything will be fine. Story 80. I did this before on a similar thread, but it's still fun if you haven't seen it. Say this out loud quickly. What is the word that is spelled S-H-O-P? Your answer, when you're driving and come to a green light, what do you do? Your answer, think about what you said. Does it make sense? Or did you get primed? Story 81. In this day and age, confirmation bias may be the most important psychological bias. Whether we realize it or not, we seek out information that reaffirms what we already believe is true and makes us feel good about our own values and choices. We may need to deliberately and uncomfortably take ourselves out of our comfort zone, whether it's reading news sources we normally don't seek out or learning about someone else's political or religious worldview, to try to balance out this natural human bias. Story 82. Most people will look at your eyes when you look at theirs. Really useful for things like magic tricks. Story 83. Think that hot person across the room has been checking you out? Look at your watch. Chances are they will mirror you. Story 84. Say please and thank you. Super simple, but many people don't. People will treat you much better for just having common decency. Story 85. Closed eye hallucinations. It's hard to do without hallucinogenics, but can be achieved through meditation and relaxation. When you're lying in bed, just watch those visuals in the blackness. The specks started to expand, colors come in. If you practice long enough, you can start to see clear, defined images and even drift into lucid dreaming. I haven't gotten that far, but I have seen some fun things like fractals, cartoon ducks, and scorpions so far. Story 86. When parting from a conversation or phone call, say something other than goodbye. Most people replying will repeat your words. You, bye, them, bye, me, booga booga. Story 87. Expressive writing has been proven to help mental health and reduce feelings like stress. Also, like Dale Carnegie said, people love hearing their own names. I'm sure there's a study or something, but make sure to make an effort to use other people's names. It makes them feel good. Story 88. If you want to convince someone, sell something, or communicate effectively, use mirroring. It works. Story 89. When you ask someone for something, smile a little and nod your head almost imperceptibly. I almost always get what I'm asking for when I do this. Feels like a Jedi mind trick. I think people just like making someone happy and don't want to ruin the moment. Story 90. If you give a child or person 3 choices of activities or foods, etc., that are predetermined by you, they will be satisfied and won't complain because they made the choice themselves. This worked like a charm when I was a teacher. Story 91. You're more likely to remember bad things that have happened to you than good things. I think it's called negative recall bias, not a psychologist here. And knowing about it helped me see things that bothered me in a better light. Stay positive, my dudes and dudette. Edit. Forgot about the dudettes. Story 92. If you are offering sizes of items for sale, drinks for example, leave out the smallest, cheapest one when asking what size they want. The same holds true of additives that have a cost. As they are ordering, state, not ask, do you want kale or lemongrass? The customer assumes that these are the only options and will order accordingly. Story 93. It's easy to manipulate someone's action based on how you're showing emotion, making the other person or people like they are in control of the situation even though it's really you. Story 94. Ku's law of reversed effort. When the imagination and conscious mind are at war, the imagination will invariably gain the upper hand. In a nutshell, if you say do not do X to someone, their first thought will be about doing X. If you rephrase it in terms of the opposite of X, let's call it Y, so saying do Y instead, even when Y is literally the opposite of X, they will not think about doing X. A good example of this is Darren Brown making a tightrope walker fall off for the first time in their career, just by telling them not to. Story 95. You can use mirroring in two ways. One way is to subtly touch your face, brief scratch, run fingers through hair, etc. If they do something similar, they're interested in the conversation. Both ways are a sign of rapport, but if the mirroring happens often, it can turn into manipulation. Story 96. If you hand someone a folded piece of paper, they'll accept it. Even if they watched you fold a blank sticky note, they will still accept it when you give it to them. Story 97. When traveling or sightseeing, play a new song on your phone iPod when you arrive at a new destination. That song will now deliver a rush of flashbacks to that beach, sunset, monument, country, city, ECT anytime you hear it. Story 98. If you want something from a person and you think it's a lot to ask for something outrageously larger. It will make the follow-up request for the thing you actually want seem more feasible. Hey man, can you loan me 200? Fudge, no. All right, how about just 10 then? Story 99. If you are trying to cheer a kid up who is crying, distract them. I prefer to ask them what they are for breakfast that morning and whether it was good. Story 100. How to deal with a sociopath. This may seem a little specific for this thread, but I found something that works for me and thought I would share it. I spent far too much of my time Googling solutions to this problem because I work with a sociopath, and I'm not calling him this to insult him. He really does have a personality disorder, and the only thing close to a descriptive match for his behavior was sociopath. After it getting to the point where no one was comfortable being around him and tension became very high in the office, I felt I had to do something. I watched coworkers go to my boss, and the thing is, this person was doing a lot of things to subtlety screw with people. Things that sound very petty, and if told one by one, makes the person complaining look like a meanie. The key to all of this is that is intentional on the sociopath's part. They are intentionally playing a game where they understand the rules and they determine the outcome. The trick is basically this: do not engage. This sounds obvious, but here's the thing. I've watched coworkers try to talk to him. There is no one home to talk to that resembles a human being. I've had coworkers tell him to fudge off. This does work, but not for their benefit, and now they've lost his game because they've given him an in or a means to continue the conversation and to continue his game. Do not engage is broad, but basically encompasses this: be polite if they speak directly to you. Never look them in the eyes if possible. Act like you are very busy. This way, if they complain that you're being rude, you can easily say, "Oh no, I'm just very busy." Notice that I didn't apologize in that sentence, which leads me to never apologize, and also never put yourself in a situation where an apology would be necessary, i.e. do not tell him to fudge off. If he is interrupting your conversation with speech intended to gain him the upper hand, completely fudge, ignore him, and only acknowledge him if he is actually near you or in your line of sight. If this happens, pretend you're busy and wander away. Never take favors or gifts from this person. If offered, politely decline, emphasis on politely, then look like yes, you're busy and walk away. Do not stick around because this only invites the sociopath to talk to you more. Everyone else in my office continually gets riled by him by giving him the very negative attention he obviously craves. I am not bothered by him, and he has learned that I am not an interesting target by sticking to the methods I've described above. Edited to add, I've also found that since he has lost interest in me, I don't feel tension anymore at work, and I'm happier. Story 101. Reverse psychology. Just moved in with two friends who are a couple. Girl accomplishes getting boy to do things she wants done, but doesn't know how to do herself. Cooking certain meals, starting fire in the wood stove, etc., by trying to do them in front of him, after which hell exclaimed, "Let me do it." You don't know what the fudge you're doing because he usually won't do it if asked. Answer. Before I met my wife, a reading of my culinary accomplishments would make any decent cook cringe at best. My culinary failures would no doubt have chefs around the world clamoring to have me tried in The Hague. But then there came a fateful day where, both being broke, she offered to cook for me in lieu of going out. Obviously, I said yes because I'd assumed that anyone offering to cook probably knew what they were doing. To her credit, she poured love and care into the spaghetti that she made. But love alone does not make a decent meal. Store-bought sauce with spaghetti was a simple enough thing that I'd managed it before, but I just cooked and drained pasta and then covered it in a jar of sauce. She was not content with anything so simple and so she adjusted the sauce with herbs and spices and salt. Indeed, she was so consumed by the task of producing cheap spaghetti sauce, one, that the water boiled out of her pan and the pasta burned. She rescued the pasta before it was a total loss, and a single glance at the pan was enough for me to know that it would have been kinder to pull the metaphorical plug. No amount of tender care would ever restore the pasta to what it was, and the best that could be hoped for is that the twisted, maimed ingredient would at least offer substance to a meal without detracting too much from the taste. Eventually, she grew satisfied with buying the sauce, or else she simply gave up all hope. The ruined pasta was married with a sauce suitable only for ruined salsa. I grimly chewed my way through that meal of salt and spice, so intense that they merged into a single beige flavor that sapped me of any hope that good food still existed. And at the end, I could only think that surely I could do better. So I offered to cook the next meal. Pasta was still cheap, so I made chicken Alfredo using a pre-roasted chicken and a from-scratch sauce that seemed eerily simple. Heat butter and cream with a few spices, then mix in shredded cheese and a bit of citrus. I could do that. I dutifully followed the recipe, taking as much care as I could, and in the end, I handed her a plate of pasta tossed in the richest and most decadent Alfredo sauce I'd ever had. I mean, it was good, really good, and I'd made it. That night, stuffed with carbs and fats, and worn to exhaustion by the sort of activity that heavy cream sauces and a bottle of white wine tend to inspire, she cleaned up the considerable mess I'd made. I joked that if it got me out of doing the dishes that I'd do the cooking. She thought about it and she agreed, and so was settled our oldest accord that we simply refer to as the accord. Whoever does the cooking does not have to do the cleanup. Over the years, I've cooked thousands of dishes. Some were wonderful, a few were disasters, and we've always followed the accord. But sometimes when I get out of the kitchen, having spent hours preparing some amazing multi-course dinner, and my wife manages the cleanup in minutes, I wonder if I'd been bamboozled by that spaghetti. She's cooked a few times since then, and the result is good enough that I suspect that perhaps I'd been had. Ah, well, turns out I like cooking. I guess even if it was a bamboozle, everything turned out okay. Even that time that I tried to make a casserole out of canned vegetables and ramen noodles with a few other things, because at least that dish is always there to remind me that sometimes my wild ideas are really stupid. Story 102. Sometimes instead of nodding and saying yeah to everything I understand, I will ask questions about parts I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Story 103. If you're in close proximity to someone and you notice their eyes dilating while speaking to them, they're attracted to you. Story 104. When walking down a busy street, keep your eyes straight and even make contact with people. I saw this once, and now whenever I walk, if I make eye contact and keep it, I never have to move out of the way. It really feels like magic. I'm walking a straight line in a heavily dense area full of other pedestrians, and I never have to move out of people's way. Unless they're just not looking ahead, it feels like I can keep my path and just will people out of my way. Pretty cool trick. Story 105. Here's what I've learned. Human beings have an innate instinct to pick up on little tricks and learn to be disgusted by them. Smiling is good and makes people like you more, unless you do it too much, in which case you will terrify people. A strong handshake is a good thing unless you make it too strong, then you come off as a classless douche. Using a girl's name in a sentence can help fast-track intimacy between you and her. I've heard so many girls complain about guys using their name too much. Just look at ads and how aggressive they have to be now compared to in the past. Our shields are up. Human beings are adept at picking up on little psychological tricks used against them, even if they don't know it. So in other words, most of these answers will work in the short term, but have a high potential of making you off-putting in the long run. Answer. Like everything else, moderation is key. When you go overboard on these sorts of psychological tricks, you become transparent in your intentions. You also probably come off as someone who is consciously trying to use these tricks without it looking like you are consciously trying to use these tricks. At best, it's distracting. At worst, it's disingenuous. Story 106. Touching someone lightly on the shoulder when talking to them creates a temporary bonding effect, then can make them more susceptible to what you are saying. Story 107. When someone is posing an argument, trying to persuade you that their perspective is correct, watch out for rhetorical questions. They'll ask a question for which you should already know how they would answer it in favor of their position. Even if you consciously disagree with that position, your brain will jump to provide the expected, correct, answer. Your brain gets primed to accept those answers as actually true. This can be a powerful tactic if executed well. Watch religious presentations for good examples. Story 108. Negotiating. Most people are nice. I'm nice too. It's very easy to use this knowledge to your own advantage. Zhao. When someone says something they think or want, the most natural thing for them right after is to try and balance it out by a counter-argument. Because they don't want to be perceived themselves as rude, as in, I really want a raise. I know it's not been the easiest year for the company. When you said something you want, shut up. Just stop talking. It can be silent for a while, 20 seconds. Let them respond to it. It'll be a lot harder for them to minimalize it than for you. From the other end of the table, when they said something they want, just let them talk. Once they start down-talking their peak demand, just chime in. They'll give up on it. They brought up that it was a bad idea themselves. There. You can now easily outmaneuver nice people in many one-on-one negotiations. Answer, building on that, if you struggle with not using the mitigative language and/or don't have the social capital to omit it, you can achieve the same effect by front-loading the sentence with empty politeness. Example, I was wondering if we could discuss the possibility of my getting a raise this year. Then look at them expectantly. You haven't been brusque. You haven't made any demands. You haven't gotten uppity. You very respectfully put the ball entirely in their court. You can use tone and delivery and body language to be however subservient you need to be to get along in this workplace. And you haven't given them any arguments against giving you a raise. Story 109. Understand how people's behaviors can be different depending on the context. For examples, studies have shown that judges will give harsher sentences when they are hungry. So just because someone is nice, mean, rude, in one situation, doesn't mean they will act that way in all situations. This is known as the fundamental attribution error. People have a tendency to believe that other people's actions are based on their own internal characteristics as opposed to external factors. For example, if they see someone slip, they will think that person is clumsy. Whereas if they themselves slip, they will think the floor is too slippery. This is related to another psychological concept, the self-fulfilling prophecy. The idea is that you can cause something to be true based on positive feedback between your belief and your behavior. For example, this person was curt to you before, so you assume they are rude. When you talk to them again, you raise your voice. In turn, that person senses your hostility and responds in a brusque manner, thereby confirming to you that this person is rude. Whereas if you can realize that perhaps this person was rude because they just had a bad day, then your future interactions might be different. Of course, sometimes people are just assholes. Story 110. If you force yourself to physically smile, your brain associates that with being happy, and it actually makes you feel happier. Though. Story 111. The old Q trick. Ask someone to draw an imaginary Q on their forehead. What you're looking for is the way the little swish on the Q goes. If they draw it to their right, your left, then that means they are drawing it as they would naturally see it and are only conscious of their perception. To you, it would look backwards. However, if they draw it to their left, your right, then they are actively conscious of how you perceive it and want it to be facing you the correct way. People who do this method are more inclined to be good liars and/or manipulators. Story 112. A few of the ones I've read are bordering on manipulative, so just going to make this point real quick. But firstly, to differentiate manipulative crap, at least as I would, there is extortive manipulation and affirmative manipulation. Extortive manipulation coerces people to do things they otherwise wouldn't, and is what comes to mind with the word manipulation. You screw with someone to get them to do what you want, not what they want. This is usually out of selfishness, possibly through narcissism or sociopathy apathy, and is usually seen as convincing someone to do something for you at their expense, in a parasitic rather than symbiotic way. Affirmative manipulation is usually used to calm someone and is done usually to try to help comfort them, more or less selflessly. People don't like being extorted. That's obvious. If they pick up on it, all hell will break loose. Even if they don't, it's unethical. Don't do it. That was a tangent, sorry. Like half of my family members are extortive manipulators. So I pick up on this shoot, and it makes me flip the fudge out. Also, I have a pretty minimal understanding of this stuff besides what seriously not to do. So sorry. Pay attention to people's body language and tone of voice. Faster speaking usually suggests anxiety or energy. Slower speaking suggests calmness or serenity. Higher voice suggests excitement. Lower voice suggests seriousness. Body language, feet in particular, pretty telling. People's feet often face who they want to talk to or are focused on. My guess is this is because they want to rotate to face them most comfortably, so torso and feet naturally turn that way. Crossed arms and slouching are a closed position, and likely means they don't want to talk. This can mean that they are feeling down, though, not exclusively that they don't want to talk. This can usually be cleared up by paying attention to tone of voice and where their body is directed. Better posture, shoulders back, arms open, often even outstretched, forms an open body position, usually inviting someone to talk, and usually also suggests relative happiness. Eye contact. People avoiding eye contact often want to avoid talking, usually either to you, to anyone, or about the subject at hand. This, however, I found to be very often overcompensated for. All that being said, people often pick up on this subconsciously, and you can use this. It's minimal, but it might have some useful info. Or maybe I'm wrong. Someone will correct me, and I'll learn something. Edit to clarify that extortion is usually for selfish benefit, while affirmation is a form of conscious, emotional support. Story 113. I used to call people who had committed fraud when working in banking. Silence is such a wonderful thing when trying to get people to talk. They naturally feel awkward and try to fill the silence. Answer: this technique was taught to us as 911 operators. We occasionally get shady calls or we have to talk to shady people. So we are trained in various ways to passively obtain information without trying to seem like we are trying to get information. It's useful in many situations, not just with shady people either. Like when you are talking with someone who is emotionally compromised or distracted and you ask a question and don't get the answer you need several times in a row. Asking the question and just being silent after they answer, you'll likely get them to elaborate without having to sound like you are badgering them. Story 114. When in a conversation and you want them to listen to something you have to say, instead of saying listen, say listen to this. It puts the focus on the fact that you have something in particular you want to say and off the situation of them having to listen to you. Don't know if I explained that right, but I've tested it out IRL a lot. Story 115. I think this hit front page recently on some big subreddit, but in an emergency, avoid the bystander effect by talking directly to specific people. You call 911. You write down the license plate number, you get a first aid kit, etc. Give specific instructions to specific people. Story 116. If you want somebody to do something out of two options, start with the one you want them to do and say it with an upward inflection. Then say the one that you don't want them to pick and say it with a downward inflection. Do you want to do X or just do Y? Everyone picks X. Story 117. Mirroring a person's body language makes them feel more positive towards you, as if you two have something in common. Just don't make it too obvious. Stay subtle or they might feel put off. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vanchoose. See you soon.